You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Hello and welcome to the 602 Club, Trek FM's local watering hole. I'm just so excited to be here. I'm one of your hosts, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as she is every single week, the keeper of keys for the 602 Club, our own Christy Morris.
Hello. I actually requested we talk about this time, and I'm really excited to see what you think of this one and everybody else.
Yeah, me too. You know, I remember when this came out last year on Netflix, and it was just one of those things. You know, we kind of live in this age of television and content. There's just so much, you know, and so, but we have nothing but time right now, as in where we are in the world, you know, with so many of us having to stay home more often and everything like that. So, you know, I'm really glad that we got around to talking about this. We're going to be talking about Locke and Key from Netflix, its first season, and really excited to get into it. But before we do, we just want to say thank you for joining us. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please do give us a star rating review. Let people know what you think of the show. Make sure you're subscribed as well wherever you're getting your podcasts, because that way you'll get the show as soon as it drops. You can find us on Twitter at TrekFM. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. You can also find us over at Trek.fm, where you can get over to the contact section and you can send Christy and I an email. Or we've got the listeners only discussion group on Facebook called the Babel Conference, where you can talk to listeners from all over the world. And then last but not least, I want to say a huge thank you to our associate producers here through Patreon: Ken Tripp, Davis Grayson, Ryan Millett, and Daniel Noah. Thank you so much for supporting the show through Patreon and being associate producers. Like our associate producers, they know that to keep everything coming to you here on the Trek FM network, not just the 602 Club, but the entire network, we need your help. And so you can join us over on Patreon. A little bit a month makes all the difference. So go to patreon.com/TrekFM so you can be part of the team. There are some great contribution levels you can give at to get extra perks. But again, honestly, every little bit helps. And again, you can find that over at patreon.com/TrekFM. Chrissy, I didn't have this on the outline, but I did want to ask you because this is based off a comic series. And I wondered, had you read this comic series at all before you saw the show?
No, and actually it's interesting that I hadn't, because this was at a time when my resurgence happened with reading comics again. But yeah, I never heard about it. So the first that I saw about this comic series or anything was when it appeared on Netflix. What about you?
I'm the same way. You know, I feel like somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that this was a comic series. You know, I worked at Barnes and Noble during this time, and so I'm sure that I probably even saw it. But I was not reading this type of comic then. I was just really starting to get into my, superhero phase of comics, and I was reading some Star Wars comics at the time too. So I wasn't really diving into anything else, so I didn't realize this was a comic. But the most interesting thing to me in this is that there's a real... we talked about development hell last week, but they needed to find the right development key to make this work, because they'd been trying to make this work for a really long time. And so it starts off as a comic in 2008, and they have about a 37-issue run, and then they have like a special run of like 5 other issues, I think, that kind of add some short stories, if I was reading correctly. And then in 2010... they were going to develop this as a TV series for Fox, and they, in conjunction with DreamWorks and 20th Century Television, they got Alex Kurtzman and a Bob Orci, who, have obviously had a big impact on the Star Trek universe, because of 2009. Kurtzman is also working with Star Trek now, with Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. They casted this pilot. They had people like Miranda Otto, who was in the Lord of the Rings films, Jesse McCarthy, other people, big names, Nick Stahl. Gosh, he was in Terminator 3. So they order the pilot, but and they actually screened it at San Diego Comic-Con, but they don't actually put this into series, which, wow. I mean, to have your pilot screen at San Diego Comic-Con, but then have this series go nowhere, that's crazy.
Yeah, that to me was a really big eye-opener into just how bad the development hell was for this. Because, I mean, thinking about how embarrassing that might be as well, of they're really gung-ho about this so much that they're finally showing it publicly at such a big event, and then to have it just drop again.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's not unprecedented for this to happen, but I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And then by 2014, at San Diego Comic-Con, they announced that they were going to do this as a feature film trilogy with Universal Pictures, where Kurtzman and Orci were expected to be associate producers, and, well, that doesn't pan out. So if we've learned anything from the development key for this series, it's not to announce something at San Diego Comic-Con.
Or to announce anything until you've got some more legwork going on that really, I don't know, like how you would 100% be certain before you put it out there. But
yeah, I mean, this does happen to other things, but this is a little bit funny that it keeps happening. By 2016, they announced that it's going to be a TV series. By 2017, it's going to be on Hulu. And then by 2018, it's moved to Netflix, which we know comes to fruition because we're talking about the Netflix season here. So
yeah. And I'm sure the creators are going, finally, good Lord.
Thank the maker, Well, and it's really interesting, too, because get somebody that I'm very familiar with, actually, just because of their other work, Carlton Cruz. He's done Lost, which I know him for. I know he did Bates Motel, which I never watched, but he also did Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, which we've covered here on the 602 Club. So him being here with Locke and Key, I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, it's interesting to see his name in the credits because I know this guy, and it actually made me really excited. And some of the executive producers that we have on the show are actually Joe Hill, who was responsible for the comic. So him and Gabriel Rodriguez were both writers of the comic. So the fact that he was going to be on the show, I wonder if that was part of it, is that they finally were able to just find the right people behind the scenes to really make this work. And not only that, but I mean, Netflix seems to be, a place where people can work. I mean, and it makes sense why they would want this type of show to happen, because as I was watching it, I was realizing, this feels like it has enough of that, the Stranger Things-ness to it, because it's kind of got the supernatural magic, got a weird, you're not quite pigeonhole it into one thing. And yeah, so, I mean, this just seems like it finally found the right fit with Netflix.
Yeah, I agreed, especially with Netflix having done some similar things like Stranger Things, and kind of building on that genre in what they offer as Netflix originals. I think that this was a natural fit at this point. And I mean, I'm glad to get to see more shows like this. I don't know why the publicity wasn't better for Lock and Key, even as the comic, but I think that it deserves more attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is something where I was interested to go back now maybe and read the comic just to see what differences there are. And, one of the things that I liked about the development of this is that you do have the actual creator of the comic helping produce the show. And so that even the fact that they changed the name of the town from what it was, which in the comic it's Lovecraft, Massachusetts. They changed it in honor of an author and screenwriter, Richard Matheson, for the series instead. So that was something that the creator of the comic decided that he wanted to do. So those kind of things, like, I just think you get the right people behind it, and sometimes that just means having the original people behind it. Mm-hmm. And then hearing that, though, that not all of this stuff is just lock, stock, and barrel from the comic. Like, they're just not porting everything over one for one, but they're making some changes so that there is some difference, I think is smart too, because, a lot of authors do that. With Gone Girl, the movie version is different than the book end. And the person who wrote the book also wrote the movie and did it on purpose so that people wouldn't just come in knowing what happened, because that sometimes is pretty boring. So again, I think, it seems like Netflix allowed them to really maybe start to think about some of these things. And, I don't know about you, but I hate to give it away, but I think that this turned out to be a really good show.
Yeah. So I did want to hit on too, in particular, since the town originally was named Lovecraft. Obviously, for those of you that don't know, it was, in honor of H.P. Lovecraft, who told these kind of horror, mystery, supernatural stories, and created Cthulhu, the character, and really like to explore things like that about what the human condition might consist of in an alternate reality. And so I'm kind of predisposed to liking that kind of story anyway, since I lean into that a lot with stuff like Stranger Things. So this really was right up my alley as far as the topic. I think just flipping through things that were available on Netflix, it came across at first as more of a supernatural but teen love story. And so I think that's what turned me off at first and made me hesitant. But I'm glad that I watched it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, one of the things that I didn't really know too much coming into this. I had just seen it be on Netflix. I don't even know if I had watched the trailer. But then you're like, hey, let's do this show. I watched it, and I think you'd be really good to talk about. And I was like, okay. So kind of coming in, not really knowing much or really seeing much, one of the things I was really surprised with this show is the way that it keys into the mystery. It's really keying into the mystery of the show. From the very beginning. And the best thing for me about this show is absolutely the way that it builds the mystery for every episode. Yes. I get so tired of watching Netflix series, and you and I have even talked about some of them, where 2 episodes maybe in the middle, you're like, if you condensed all that, you could have disseminated all that information into other episodes and made this like a 6-episode series instead of 8 or 10, And this, my wife and I kept talking about it. Like, it was always keeping our attention. It was always building on the story. The characters were never boring, and the episodes were always keeping me engaged. And that's something that I think in serialized television, it's so important to parse out whatever mystery you're trying to solve throughout your season in a way that makes every episode feel like it's necessary. Like that we're not wasting your time with 40 or 50 minutes worth of television. And this show nailed it to me. Like, I was really shocked because all Netflix shows, I expect the middle to get like really saggy and just like boring. And this one, I never had that feeling, and I was shocked.
I was so glad to hear that, because especially since I was the one that suggested it, I didn't know what you would think. But yeah, I think that they do this great formula with this show in particular of toward the end of every episode, reintroducing a new question. And so then that creates your desire to see the next episode and get into that binging pattern of, well, now I have to know what that's about. So we'll finish it.
Well, and on top of that, and we'll kind of get into bigger detail on like the entire mystery of the season, but I think just the way that they parsed out the mystery of not only what's going on in the present, but the way that this is impacted by the past and kind of building that all together, because the show does a great job of this whole mystery of the family moving from Seattle to Massachusetts back to this mansion called Key House in Matheson, Massachusetts. And you get the sense like it's not a place that their father who has died, who has been killed, and his brother who's still alive and comes in and out of the show every once in a while, that this is a house that they really liked. Like, this is a place that they even want to be around anymore. And so there's this mystery about that, and then we continue to build in the mystery of why the husband got killed, but also how that's actually connected to the past when he was a kid, and what's going on now. And so every episode is parsing out the different information that you need to keep you interested, and like you said, Christy, raising a new question or two new questions that the episodes do a great job of not only subsequently therefore answering throughout the episodes, but doing a great job of actually answering enough questions each episode so that you feel like they're rewarding you for watching each episode, instead of it being like, again, why am I watching this episode? There was nothing in that episode that helped me with any of the mysteries, and this doesn't do any of that. It actually does what a show that serialized is supposed to do, which is to make each episode an important piece of the puzzle that they're putting together. Because really, this show is perfectly named in Lock and Key, but also this show feels like you're putting a puzzle together, but you don't quite know what the picture is because you don't know all the context from the past that'll help you see more clearly what's going on. And so it's kind of like blind puzzling, if that makes sense. But it's enjoyable the whole time. And again, I keep praising the same thing, but with these type of shows that we're getting now, I feel like if a show does it right, we need to stand up and say, bravo,
Yeah. I think that your puzzle analogy is the perfect way to explain it, because it's like you haven't seen the top of the box to know what you're supposed to be getting. And then they're introducing all of these interesting new pieces to the story, like that there's all of these different keys, and then you're learning about what each of them do. And then at the same time about the past of these people and how, we all love how we've said before in other episodes, how they toss you into the action in the beginning of the first episode without giving you a bunch of background story to bring you in first. They just immediately show that there's a guy who is committing suicide with the matchstick key. And you're going, whoa. I think it's the perfect way to structure it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right with that. And I would say of the Netflix shows that I've seen, just to kind of give a comparison for people, I would say, Stranger Things Season 1, Daredevil Season 1, and probably Punisher Season 1 are the only shows where I was really watching the entire season and just felt like engaged really the whole time and feeling like there wasn't fat in the middle.
Yeah.
This show didn't feel like flabby.
Like at any point that there was unnecessary information.
Yes. And you mentioned, and I think this is really key. I didn't even mean to do that. Sorry. But I think this is really important, is that, there is the romance part of this, the teenage romance thing. But I didn't feel like, to me, that the show, the romance key didn't overpower all the rest of the keys to this show. How did you feel about that? Because, sometimes you watch these, like, it can get too soap opera-y, but I felt like it was just enough. Yeah,
I felt like the romance aspect took a backseat to telling more about the family, and then about just in general being high school students and trying to get through what that brings to your life, much less all of this other supernatural stuff going on in their lives. So, yeah, it ended up being just the right amount of teen romance drama to the rest of the mystery going on.
Yes. And, Yeah, if you're going to make a show with teenagers, there's obviously going to be some of that, but it didn't feel overly obnoxious. And I would say that, with the specific characters, like I'll just mention like Tyler Locke and his relationship that he kind of slowly builds throughout the season. It felt more realistic. In the sense that, like, it felt like the relationship of somebody who, he's just had his dad die. He's struggling, the struggles he's having, so those kind of things, I feel like they did a good job of not just making it ultra tropey, but they actually, I felt like, really built with the characters that they had in the story that they're telling. Mm-hmm. So that the drama that comes from teenage relationships was also being driven by the story that we're telling and what we're putting these characters through, as in moving across the country, having your dad shot in front of you, all of those kind of things, from a person that you thought was a friend, like all of that stuff, and then being thrown into a magical house with magical keys, you put all that in a blender, you would expect, there to be some drama.
And a brother you can't keep track of.
Exactly.
Bode, man. He's a pain.
Oh, man. Well, so I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about the Keeper of the Keys. And no, I'm not talking about the Keeper of the Keys and grounds at Hogwarts. I'm talking about the Keeper of the Keys in Lock and Key at Key House. And it's interesting because immediately Darby Statchfield as Nina, I'm like, I know who she is because I watched the first season of Scandal. And she's one of the main characters in Scandal. And I really like her, and I thought she did a phenomenal job in the episodes, especially when we started to play with the fact that she started drinking again and her doing the mood swings. I thought she was really good. But I also thought that she was really good as a woman who's trying to keep it all together for 3 kids, and she's suffering the loss of a husband, in the way, literally happens right in front of her. So I thought that she really added a lot of gravitas. She's very likable. And especially I thought by the end of the season, it was really where they were kind of taking her relationship with the detective from the police force, was just really nice. So I thought she did a great job.
Especially, I feel like with her dealing with this whole drinking issue, it really came across to me that you can't exactly tell if it's the drinking that's causing her like forgetfulness and confusion, or if it's her having gone into the mirror key world.
Oh, yeah. That's
because,
a good thought, yeah.
They're all thinking about, well, mom's acting kind of weird since that happened in particular, weirder than she usually has been. So I like that aspect that they added to her, and I think was intentional. But yeah, I think absolutely this show deals more than anything with how people deal with loss and trauma, and how all of them are dealing with their dad's and her husband's death differently. And she especially plays such a great role in this show, showing that like it's not just about what it meant to the kids. She's lost her partner, the other person that helped her take care of the house and the kids, and also just made her feel safe. And so I think that really comes across with her performance, and I loved it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it was interesting. One of the things as we're kind of talking about her as a character, I wanted to ask you about something around adults and magic in this world, because obviously Ellie knows what magic is, and she remembers it. And it seemed strange to my wife and I that the kids kept assuming that Nina would not be able to remember magic. And so maybe that's just something that I don't know enough about how this world works. And then, of course, she was able to start remembering it a little bit once the drinking started. So do you think that they were trying to say that basically adults just put up mental blocks that have to be broken down, and like, you know, drinking makes you unencumbered by a lot of, you know, you can break down walls very quickly when you're drinking, you know, that you wouldn't normally break down.
Mm-hmm.
So that was such something that I struggled with a little bit with her character in the storyline. I was like, why are the kids just assuming that if they don't tell their mom and maybe show her some things, like, that she'll remember?
I think personally that it was more because it seemed like they were insinuating to me that once you lose your childlike innocence, that's when you're no longer believing in general that magic is possible. But I do see your point too, that it could also be the being unencumbered, letting your inhibitions and your judgment down, and being willing to accept things that are a little more outlandish, I guess.
Yeah, it was just something that I'm interested to see how they deal with maybe in the second season, because I feel like they're going to need their mom to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know, whereas it was completely different for, like, say, their uncle and her brother-in-law, whereas, you know, he had actually had his memories taken away from him. And so for him to even look at those memories, because they've literally been taken out of him, he doesn't quite, you know, like, he can't really quite comprehend what he's seeing. Whereas her, right, you know, like, she puts the, you know, the mug in and she knows that it got fixed, you know, from the cabinet. You know, the repair key, which, like, how awesome is that? Totally want that.
But, you brought up something I meant to say when you said that, though, about the cabinet. When she went to think that she could put their dad in there.
Yeah.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
Yeah, that was rough.
And then you're also thinking, oh no, if this is like the Echo situation, don't do it.
Yeah, no, we don't want that. So. No. I do think that there are some things that I wish maybe were slightly more explained, and I would say, you know, kind of thinking with specifically Nina in that storyline with her, I felt like maybe one of the things this season needed a little more on was a better understanding of the way that this works, so that you don't, you know, keep asking questions. And they were able to actually use that to their benefit in the end, because not quite understanding how the identity key worked allowed me to have a hard time figuring out exactly how that happened at the very, very end, you know?
Yeah. Because
we didn't know if the identity key could do that. Can you force another identity on somebody? I didn't know until the very end, you know? So, yeah. But I think my favorite character in the show was actually Connor Jessup as Tyler. I thought it was really interesting the way that they played the older brother, who is struggling with what it means to be the man of the house now, feeling like he has to have more responsibility. He's trying to take care of his mother, especially when she starts drinking again. He knows it. His sister, who has literally taken her fear out of her mind and is acting irrationally much of the time. And like you said, Bode, who he's super cute and wonderful, but he's also worried about trying to, you know, take care of his younger brother and keep him out of trouble.
Yeah.
And so, and deal with the fact, you know, of like, you know, liking a girl and trying to maybe be somebody different, because he legitimately in this season kind of goes from being the jock jerk to being somebody who is willing to stand on his own 2 feet and find out who he wants to be, and not just what the it crowd wants you to be. And so, like, he had to play all of that in one season, and I was really impressed by the way that he played all of that. Like, I just really was.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. He wasn't my favorite. I'll get to it later, but he was my second favorite because he shows so much growth, and this actor did such a great job showing that change of Tyler really being a very selfish person, and then also dealing with the loss of his father and how that affected his ability to be able to move on at all and even want things anymore. You know, it feels like they get to this point where they're all very numb because they don't know how to move forward without their dad. And I like that he gets that across and shows that then you go through these stages of like anger and acceptance and then finally moving on. I think he was really strong as an actor and then also as a character. And I love that you get to see him finally becoming the leader of the group and, you know, showing his sister how to be a better person, and that trying to take the fear out of her body and kill it was a stupid decision.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. I mean, he really does kind of go from being comfortably numb, you know, like trying to numb all of his pain by like getting back into hockey, hanging out with the it crowd, partying, all those kind of things, to being encouraged to become his own person, you know. And it's one of the things I love about the teacher in the show who kind of encourages him and kind of pushes him towards being a better person. And I thought, again, he does such a great job with playing all that, and I think giving it nuance, you know, like and not just making it feel routine or boring or any of those things. So, you know, I really enjoyed that, and I think, you know, his younger sister, played by Amelia Jones as Kinsey Locke, she was really good too, because, you know, I liked the way that she played the decision, you know, to get rid of her fear, and then the way that impacts her personality, and the way that she played the growth of realizing on her own how dumb of a decision that was. Yeah. Because that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you've taken out the very thing to which, you know, makes you, you know, take pause and think through, things. And so I thought she did a great job. And again, like, so far as we're just talking about these people, like, they're all so enjoyable and likable on screen. And I think she just adds to that.
So I will add, she was a little disappointing to me sometimes, just the actress's performance, because I felt like, although they are supposed to be playing sometimes very numb characters, that she could have been more expressive in her facial expressions and her, you know, tone and volume of her speech. Like, it just came across very one note to me sometimes, and a little frustrating, because I felt like she should have been more emotive than she was. But I think overall it was pretty good. And I do think that she did an excellent job with those episodes about dealing with her fear and showing the difference in a person when they're without it. You know, I mean, it basically takes away even that hesitance to do something that might be risky. And so that came across really well.
Yeah, what you were saying, I was thinking of that was actually maybe I took that as a choice that they were making, that they kind of took away some of that ability, because she doesn't actually have the ability to be as emotive, because part of who she is, like part of like sadness and all of those things, has to do with, you know, fear inside of you. And because she doesn't have that, like, she literally lacks the ability to be able to play things more emotively. Like, because there are only a few emotions than you have, because you can't play scared as well or any of those things, because you don't actually have that inside of you anymore. Yeah. So I don't know. That's interesting. I'll be interested to see how she grows then in season 2. So.
Yeah. But I do like the route that they took the character in general, with Kinsey being the daring one who, you know, is taking the keys and using them against her bully at school. And Tyler is going, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think, again, too, that one of the things that I really liked about that is that with her storyline and with, like, you know, she's kind of being pulled in different directions. You know, she's got Scott, she's got Gabe, you know, she's got these two men on either side. And in many ways, it's almost like she has a shoulder angel and shoulder devil. You know, Gabe is kind of pushing her to be more the fearless one, and Scott is the one who's kind of pushing her towards, you know, being the true version of herself. I think Scott really likes the real the real Kinsey Locke. Will the real Kinsey Locke please stand up? But she can't because she has lost the ability to be the true Kinsey because she doesn't have her fear.
Yeah.
And so, and Gabe kind of is the one who really kind of continues to nudge her in that direction and being, I would say more reckless. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously we'll know the consequences of that as we talk some more about the entire mystery. But Jackson Robert Scott as Bode Locke, when he was like, when the two other siblings are arguing at the breakfast table and he grabs the bacon and he pulls it towards him and he goes, "Hey, no arguing in front of the bacon." Like, he is adorable. He's so adorable. And I loved that, they played him as smart, but also only as smart for his age, really, in many ways. Mm-hmm. They don't make him too smart. And he was a great actor. And I really enjoyed his screen presence. Like, every time he's on screen, he's kind of magnetic. And when he's hanging out with Rufus, it's so adorable. The fact that his lightsaber, his, rainbow lightsaber actually plays a part in quote unquote saving the day at the end of the season was awesome, mainly because he's been able to figure out how these keys work, right? And so I just really liked him. He's so cute. Like, when you think of like wanting to have like a little boy child, this is kind of like what you're hoping your kid turns out like.
Yeah. So I'll tell you right now, he was my favorite character of this whole season. I feel like they played him excellently. Like you're saying, that he wasn't too smart for his age. But he was really interesting because he had such courage for being such a young kid. And, he's may make some stupid decisions also because he's young, but he really always, seems to know what the right thing to do is. And although he's been affected just like all of them about the loss of his dad, he seems like the one who is moving on the best so far. And is, at first really kind of keeping the family together. And he's the one who's exploring things with the house and finding all of the keys. And I like that they have them whisper to him. And then him teaching his siblings about it. I really think that he just, as an actor and as a character, was the best part of the whole season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could agree with you more. I just think... It really is beautiful, the portrayal we get from him, and he's just so much fun. Like, I really have so much fun with him. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was great. And it's really interesting because too, I think it's fascinating that he's one of the reasons, he's one of the impetuses for this entire show happening because he's able to be seduced basically by Lady, Echo or Dodge or whatever you want to call her. Mm-hmm. And I think she does such a good job of playing somebody who's so utterly ruthless. And I started to piece together what she was, and I remember turning to my wife. I was like, I think she has to be like some kind of demon, because that would be the only thing that really explains why she's so evil, mm-hmm. and why she has no compulsion about like pushing a kid in front of a train, which she does. Like literally throws a kid in front of a subway train, and walks away as if nothing happened. And so she's phenomenal playing that. And so not everybody can do it in a way that feels quote unquote natural and doesn't just feel like mustache twirling, but there's so much menace in her, but so much ease with the menace. That's what's so freaking creepy about it.
Yeah, I think especially the fact that she's just so resolute in it, and like you said, with the ease of doing things like that. I think they had to show what she was capable of to show that Bode is in real danger. But I think that also she, as an actress, does such a great job with the way that she uses her face to tell the story, of just keeping it so together that she's always got it under control until something sets her off and her anger takes over. I love that scene of her and Bode with the ring of fire. I think that it was really, really cool to have her be able to use all of the keys the way that she does. And then the reveal at the end, especially of, who she really is, I think was so cool.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. And again, I think, she just plays it so well. There's some other actors and everything I think we could talk about, but I feel like it's probably a good time for us to kind of talk about the key to it all.
Yeah.
Because this story is really, when you get down to it, there's a lot to it. And so it really is about how the past and the present collide, as Dodge, or Lucas, is able to trick Bode into letting her out of the well. And she exists because Rendell, Locke, and his friends had found the Omega key and opened the door in the sea caves. And when they had done that, Lucas was hit by a demon, bullet as they call it, and possessed. And as he's possessed, he kills 3 of their group before Wendell can knock him out. And they're able to trap him in the well. And, they concoct this whole story about their friends drowning in the cave. And the biggest impetus for all of that is the fact that Ellie had returned to the well house and used the echo key and returns Lucas to our world, basically. And then Dodge is the one who, it's so complicated. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't when you're watching the show. That coincides with the fact that Dodge then tempts Sam, this kid at the school that Rendell works at, where his kids go to school, in by telling him he's special. He comes from a troubled family, and she tells him all about the keys and basically seduces him into helping her find the keys at any cost. And he shoots Rendell, and then that's when the family moves back to Key House, and everything, proceeds as we get in the show. But the mystery of all that, and again, we talked about earlier, the way they parse all that out, it's a really well-constructed show, and I think part of the reason that is that this already has great source material to pull from, so they're able then, okay, how do we then parse this out into each episode and make it work? And I thought that part was really good, but just figuring out this mystery, my wife and I were turned to each other during parts of the show, and we'd pause it and be like, okay, I think this is what's going to happen.
Right.
it's that kind of fun to watch as you're trying to figure out this mystery along with the show and then see if your theories are right.
Yeah, I think absolutely. The story with Dodge and all of the different ways that Lucas is able to become Dodge and then make all of these things happen is the thing that makes it turn, is that the thing that makes this show so interesting and keeps you guessing and going, oh, well, what if this caused that to happen? And trying to figure out why Rendell's brother's memories are gone. All of these different pieces make it fascinating. And I think especially having the identity key and the echo key make the biggest difference in the plot. I think that having Lucas end up becoming Dodge and then bringing additional demons out of the Black Door, and then using the identity key to morph, like you were saying earlier, Ellie's face to look like Dodge, and them to then accidentally push Ellie into the Black Door. Mind blown.
Yeah. Well, that's something, because my wife and I were like, but because this is one of the things where we were, things are a little fuzzy. Can you use the identity key to force somebody else to, turn into something else. And I guess I should have known that because Dodge was able to use the head key on somebody else.
Right.
And so you can use the keys. So I guess they really do answer that question. You have to be paying attention, Matt. Come on. And so, but it just seems so implausible, really. And so my thought process had been like, had she like hidden Ellie in the shadows or something with the crown and all? So I was thinking something like that. But then it also, but when we got to the last episode, it's like, this is just too easy. And then, of course, the reveal is that Gabe is also Dodge. And that was all the way back in episode 2 where they're like, yeah, he's the new kid at school as well. And so, and he's been using that face, Dodge has been using that face to get close to Kinsey and kind of like push her towards doing certain things. And so that was really fascinating. And of course, the fact that then we get Eden, who has been hit by the demon bullet, and we find out that now there are 2 demons in the world. There's Dodge and Eden. And so who knows what's going to happen in season 2. And of course, will they be able to get Ellie back, from whatever is behind, the Omega door, which feels like some sort of awful hell. It's just, it's really cool. And I think, like you had mentioned earlier, with kind of drawing off of Lovecraft and some of his ideas, I think the show walks a really good line between feeling fun and magical and Harry Potterish, but also feeling dangerous and horror-ish. And in many ways, it kind of has that Stranger Things, Harry Potter vibe going for it in there, which it really works for the show. And so, the key to it all, I think, was the fact that the mystery was so much fun to try and figure out as we're watching the show, and that I never felt like I wasn't getting enough through each episode to make me want to continue. Yeah,
I agree with you.
And we talked a little bit about this as we were talking about some of the characters, but, the idea of like trauma and loss and the importance of fear, I really appreciated that the show dealt with these things because we got to see the trauma and loss for a lot of people in the show. I mean, we got to see what it was like for Ellie, and we got to kind of vicariously understand what the loss for Rendell and his whole set of friends was when this happened to him through them. And obviously the fact that she hadn't dealt with it very well, which leads her to do what she does with the echo key that starts this whole thing really, again. And, then the dealing with, as the entire Locke family has to deal with the loss of Rendell, I thought that was really well done because they each deal with it in their own way, and just the way that bleeds right into the other theme of the importance of fear in our lives and how fear is not necessarily a bad thing because it helps temper us. It helps stop us from doing dumb things. It helps us think before we act, So you put all of this together and you really see how, the importance of how we deal with trauma and loss can have obviously a major impact on how we're able to handle the next things that come in our lives. And what we learn in those lessons when that happens makes a huge difference on whether we can handle what comes next.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too, especially about Ellie, because it's hard not to say Ellie is the problem that started the whole ball rolling in the first place. But how Ellie dealt with the loss of her boyfriend, Lucas, is really the thing that then sets everything in motion. And that really she needed to find a different way to move on and not go that route of, well, there's got to be a way to bring him back. Because I like, too, them using the word echo for that key, because it's not that it's the same Lucas he was before.
Right.
It's a copy. It's an echo, and that there's something twisted about it. And so I think that was the perfect way to kind of introduce that idea of like, it's not the same person though.
Yeah. I think talking about how Ellie dealt with her trauma, like I think the way that her entire friend group deals with their trauma by separating themselves from one another and not being in community anymore and not really talking about what happens or talking with each other about what happens and being a support for one another, by like kind of trying to compartmentalize what had happened in their childhood and just leave it in the past. Like, you have to deal with things.
Yes.
And part of that is actually process and talk about, and none of them really do that. And I think that's obviously the very reason why Ellie does what she does, because she's never truly processed the loss of her boyfriend from high school. And that's because she can't really talk to anybody about it because they probably wouldn't believe her. And the other people that she could talk to are, not necessarily around anymore. Or they don't seem to really have been there for each other in that way. So again, I think this is really kind of showing us the importance of having community, because you juxtapose that with the way that the Locke children are dealing with what they're finding, and that they bring people in. They bring in Scott. They bring in Gabe, even though that turns out to be a bad idea. They bring in Rufus and start to trust Ellie, and they create a community around them to help deal with this problem. And instead of trying to just deal with things for themselves, you see actually even, the fact that Nina reaches out and she was going to go to the meeting. And she meets the detective there, and they end up going out for coffee and having a conversation. And we learn that he has been there before too when it comes to alcohol. And so, again, it's about finding community to help you through loss and pain. And I think, you wouldn't think that this show would have some really deep themes, but this helps us see how much we need each other in times of crisis and just in general. Like, we all need one another. And so by cutting ourselves off, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice when we do that. So I thought that was really strong, and I liked that was one of the prevailing themes of the series.
Yeah, absolutely. That the number one thing that you need at a time like that in your life is a support network and to lean on each other. And they decided to just cut themselves all completely off and either move away or just never talk about it again. And that's not how you confront the problem. They're literally running from it. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not how you deal with it. The last thing I just wanted to mention, with these type of shows, I just thought the production of the show looked great. I loved where they filmed. They actually filmed in Nova Scotia, to make it look like this fictional town in Massachusetts. I thought the CGI work was great because the house is not a real house.
Which I was surprised to hear.
Me too.
So, yeah.
But it looks really good. For the most part, again, even the CGI work, I thought it worked well. And just, again, the production of the show was really good. The lighting of the way they did the show. It actually has, they did a good job of having some, the warmth and cold of Massachusetts, and the type of weather, really doing that well, using that with the horror aspect, to me, this show looked good. And, it's not the most important thing, but it definitely helps.
Yeah, I think that's the most noticeable thing about this, besides the main story of loss, is seeing how they used the production qualities to make it have the look it has. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I noticed right off the bat, especially when they moved to Key House, that everything is very dim and old looking and creepy. And then, they do alternate as well, even in some of the scenes, the heat and cold with, the ring of fire, like I mentioned, or then with death, things being cold looking and gray and dim. But I think especially when they're switching from a lot of different scenes, if you're looking at the scene of Bode seeing the well lady for the first time versus then him in the ghost scene, the way that they've lit it and done everything that way gives it a more positive feeling. So I think that that's a huge aspect to this. And if it hadn't been done well, that it wouldn't have been as good of a show.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. So I guess there's only one question that I have left about the show then is, what do you think that you would rate Locke and Key Season 1?
I would give it an 8 out of 10. I'm going to say, I'm going to use a key. Which key, though? I think I like the head key the best. So I'm going to say 8 out of 10 head keys, because I think that it just really has a lot of awesome elements to it that keep you interested and definitely wanting to see season 2 now that they've announced that's coming out. And I've always been into skeleton keys anyway. In general, I like the mystery behind it. And so this having all of these keys that do different things really kept me interested as well. And then all of the different human elements to the story with loss and trying to rebuild and building a community. I think it really has almost firing on every cylinder. The only things that I mentioned that were a little bit of a drawback for me was Kinsey as a character I didn't love as much as the others. And I think that they could have done a little bit more with her. As far as the romantic element didn't need to be as big of an element as it was. Yeah,
I'm going to be right there with you. I would say this is 4.5 out of 5 everything keys or everywhere keys. I thought that key was amazing. The idea that you can like put it in any lock and then open the door to anywhere that you know a door is, I thought was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So would love that key. I was just really impressed with the quality of the show and the quality of the storytelling in the show and the structure of the show and the way that the season itself was structured. So huge plus for me. I really liked this, and I hope that if you haven't watched the show and you've been listening and we spoiled it all for you, go and watch it anyway. Mm-hmm. If you have watched the show, I would say, man, keep telling people to watch it because it's just great stuff. So I'm really happy that we got a chance to check it out. And I'm hoping we get to talk about season 2 because there really should be a season 2 of this. So, especially since they left on a cliffhanger, really. Mm-hmm. But, Christy, that does lead us to that time of the show where we give our recommendations.
And I've got an awesome one this time. Yay! So I highly recommend everyone check out on Hulu a show called The Case Against Adnan Syed, because this is actually a documentary series. And it all started with the podcast Serial that came out a few years ago, and where this person, Sarah Koenig, decided to review an unsolved case where it was about the murder of a high school student, Heyman Lee, and how her boyfriend at the time, Adnan, was possibly unjustly convicted of the crime. And so actually from Sarah going back and looking at the case again, that encouraged him to get another trial, which was incredible after him being in prison for 20 years, that made things, possibly change. And so now this series on Hulu is looking at what the evidence is in the case, and then him going through the new trial and seeing what the ultimate decision is, determined whether or not he actually was the murderer or not. So I love that kind of true crime stuff. But in general, I think it's a really interesting story because it does, at first glance, even after you've listened to the whole season of Serial, leave you guessing as to whether or not it really was him. And thinking, geez, if it wasn't, that's really done so much to mess up his life for someone that didn't deserve it. So anyway, I highly recommend watching the show on Hulu.
Nice. I'm going to go with, so I just recently read, and I've been slowly reading through all of the James Bond books, and I read Diamonds Are Forever, which is not a good movie, but I actually really enjoyed the book. So it was a much better book than it was movie, honestly. And so if you're looking for a good read right now, I recommend Ian Fleming's Diamonds Are Forever. I had a fun time reading that one, and it's different than the movie in many respects, which is good. And so that means you don't know the complete story. So I highly enjoyed it. I thought it was good stuff. So hopefully you'll check it out. But Christy, before we get out of here, where can everybody find you if they want to catch up with you online?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at BestBenBell. And when I'm not doing 602 Club, I do a couple of other shows. I do a show with my friend Teresa Delgado called Sabers and Spells. And we are hopefully on our next episode covering, like I was saying before, Harry Potter at Home. And we're on the Skywalking Through Neverland network, Skynet. So I hope you'll check that out. And then I also do a segment called Fashion in 5 on the Star Wars Report once a month about men's and women's Star Wars fashion.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero under the name MattRushing02. I am here on the network doing The Orb with Chris Jones, talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I have 2 shows over on the Nerd Party Network. One is called Owlpost. I do that with Drea Kaufman as we talk about Harry Potter each and every week. We're almost done with the Half-Blood Prince, so hope you'll check that show out. I'm also doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills. Every week we're picking out a fun Star Wars topic that we've been thinking about, and talking about that is a blast. So please check that out. And then last but not least, we hope to be back soon. This whole COVID thing has really hurt our recording ability because of the way we record this show. But my friend Courtney and I do a show called Cinema Stories, and we talk about films through the lens of faith. But thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?